Go ahead and get the stream shared with everybody. All right, good morning, everybody. Now, the day is bearish. We do know that. But before we jump into a trade, now I am looking for a put today. This is the 5-minute time frame. So that we're very clear, looking for a put above this. See this 652.33 level. If we get our put entry, which it's looking very likely, then we will take a put from the lower Bollinger to the 5-minute 20 ma. But we wait for that level first, which again, that's much closer to the 652.30. Now, when we get to that level, then put that I'm gonna want. Pull those up really quick. So I'm gonna want the 650 puts today. Now, this is a bit of a cup and a handle, so we do have to be careful that potentially this can be pulling downward to create that handle. Potentially this can be a double bottom as well. That side got messed up a bit. Apologize. Okay, so we're looking for that. Now I want to look over tech and everything since I haven't really had too much of an opportunity. Okay, so Bitcoin falling a bit today. Dollar elevated but pulling down slightly. Okay, oil pushing up. We have Higgs selling off. So that's a very big signal. Now we'll look at liquid. Liquid is also selling off. So pretty big signal there. Let's go back to SPY. Now for SPY, again, we're going to be very patient for our entry here. Again, just waiting for that upper Bollinger to hit. Not taking any puts prior to that. So very elevated today, pulling down a little bit in the pre-market, but still extremely elevated. And our treasury yields are also elevated today. So yeah, we will be looking for puts to the downside. Overall, that does look like the direction of the day. Now for semiconductors, we are looking for this inverse cup to close down to the 338. That will be invalidating some of the previous bullish structure on the day. So we will be looking for that close to the downside. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining up. Again, we're just waiting for our opportunity for a put currently. And for these puts, I am targeting the 650s. But again, we will be waiting for that entry prior to taking the puts. LMT is a little bit buying today, so that's showing defensive buying. Now, potentially we can see semiconductors pull upward, which I'm not really expecting, but just have to anticipate because that would form that cup to the upside. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining. Sorry if I sound sick today. Once again, I have not been feeling well, so. Okay, so we're gonna wait for our entry. Um, I'm just going to cycle around my symbols really quick and take a look at the news, make sure we're not missing anything. I want to look at QQQ, I want to look at Microsoft. Hey, Microsoft being in the upper Bollinger here can create the conditions for us to have a little bit of selling. So looking for that. Would like to get our entry prior. Now, NVIDIA. This is good on NVIDIA. This is creating the conditions for buying to the upside. So we should be seeing NVIDIA heading at least to its middle Bollinger, which is currently at the 176.32. So that should push some weight into SPY. Should help us see our level here. Again, we are targeting that 652.28. Starting to see that inverse cup closing to the downside, so that's looking very good. Okay, on SPY, we should be getting our level here very, very shortly. Just waiting for the entry. If we don't get the entry, then we will wait for, another opportunity. But currently, that's what we're going to be waiting for. Semiconductors starting to push down to the lower Bollinger here. We may not get our entry here. Should though, because NVIDIA should be seeing that upward bounce. It has at least roughly about 70 cents of upside, so should see that take place. Should give us our entry on the day. Now QQQ. So we do have to be a little cautious of this potential percent shoulders here, but overall this does look like it's going to create this inverse cup to the downside. So that will support our puts overall. Now our VVIX, which I'm looking on my phone right now, is currently pulling up quite a bit. So it's at 132.25. It's currently in its upper Bollinger on the 5-minute time frame, which can create the conditions for us to have a little bit of buying within the SPY. So we will be looking for that. Hopefully we can get in before this cup closes, but if not, then we will be looking for the head and shoulders on the day. Or something like that. So we will be super patient for our entry. Now, technically, there was a little bit of room within semiconductors here, but with the day being so bearish, I just don't like the price action. Thank you. So yeah, I just don't like the call price action. Um, just because there is a lot of selling going on the day. Okay, and on QQQ we see the invalidation of this inverse head and shoulders. So that's good. That's showing us that there is plenty of bearish structure on the day. Very likely going to be pulling upward to form an inverse handle. That will be exactly what we're trying to enter on if we don't get the move to the upside prior to that. So that's what we're looking for. Now back to SPY. It'd be really great if we could pull up, get our entry here. Now with oil, with it being at this 20-mile range, potentially can be rejecting to the downside. Not really expecting that though with the conditions on the day. Haven't checked the news yet, but so far, oil is telling us that there's still conflict going on, so not much to check within the news right now anyway. And we're just continuing to wait for our level. Semiconductors pulling down quite a bit. Now, with semiconductors pulling down so much, this can create the conditions for stocks as puts. So basically shorting the bear side of semiconductors or SOXL calls, and those would just be taken to the 20 mile again on the 5-minute time frame. So if you took those SOXL calls, they'd be from this 530 or 53.32 range all the way up to basically that 30 or 54 range. Doesn't seem like a big move, but it is a leveraged ETF, so that would be quite a move anyway. With SPY, our level is starting to look like it might be hitting here. So again, we are looking for the 60, I can't talk today, 652.34. We're at the 652.40, so our short entry is here. Go ahead and take puts. Chart, good load. Sorry, I was having some issues with my Weeble. Okay, we are within our short positions now. What many might be looking at as a potential cup right here, this has not filled out prior to that, so this is not going to form some up and handle to the upside type liquidity. Not worried about that very much at all. If anything, the cup is now being filled. So from this cup being filled, we do look for, again, the top of the cup, short the top of the cup, create the handle. This is if we're going to be bullish on the day. So from the top of the cup, create bearish liquidity or bearish structure to the downside. We will be looking for this larger head and shoulders on the day from the bearish side. Now I do want to take a look at the news and I want to take a look at the VVIX. just to make sure we're not going to get destroyed here. So VVIX still very elevated. So nothing with that. Oil pulling down slightly. So let me go ahead and take a look at the news, but this should be coming, or this should be creating our selling conditions here. Not too worried about that right now. Okay, so Iran has responded to the US 15-point proposal. Haven't said. Oh, they're responding though. So I guess there was a response from Iran. Other than that, nothing really has come out in the news. So we should be seeing our downside. Not worried about that. Now I want to take a look at semiconductors. We should be looking for this 20 mile range to start rejecting to the downside. Now this cup has closed off. So we are kind of looking for this inverse handle here. It looks a little wonky with this cup pulling all the way down, but we're looking for this inverse handle. We're looking for this rejection from the 20 mile range. And the 20 mile is at that 339 on semiconductors. So seeing a little bit of that rejection here, but we want to see much further. QQQ. See, so we do have invalidation of that. It looks like it wants to form this cup right here, which means we have completed the cup. So again, we should be looking for bearish structure at the top. So the shorts do look good. Again, we're targeting the lower Bollinger here, or the 20 mile on the 5-minute time frame, which on QQQ is roughly a whole $2 downside. On SPY, we still have quite a while. So we are looking for, again, the short position. Now I want to look at the VVIX. It is pulling down slightly, still extremely elevated here. Again, if it's above this $98 range, that does mean that there is selling taking place. So with it being this elevated, I'm not too worried about the buying on the day. Now I want to take a look at the 1-minute time frame here. So not really seeing any structure from the 1-minute time frame either. A cup, potentially cup and handle here. It's invalidated there slightly. So this does kind of look like an overshoot where we should be seeing some structure building into it to the downside. But I just want to be very sure about that. Now I want to check Microsoft and Nvidia. So Microsoft did see that cup break out to the upside. So we can delete that. Now with Microsoft, we should be seeing a bit of a pullback here. This top of the cup being hit. So again, we should be expecting a pullback within Microsoft, which would take weight out of the rest of equities as well. So we're looking for that. QQQ, still seeing our room to the downside. IG, we're still seeing selling in here, potentially going to see this 20-mile reject. So our short position does look good so far. We are seeing the rejection off this 20-mile range on semiconductors as well. So we are looking for the exit close to the 651.69. Very likely today would show more selling than that though once we get our level. Now back to the VVIX. Still just holding this 121.50 range. Nothing too indicative about this just yet. I'm still not too worried about this buying right now in the SPY, even though obviously it is buying above where we entered our puts slightly. Not really too worried about it unless we're seeing something in the news. But so far, not really seeing anything in the news yet. Okay, so Iran has sent their side of the proposition to the United States. So that's what we have so far in terms of the news. So very likely that's why we are seeing a little bit of that buying in here. Still very convicted in my short position though. Even with that push up, it's still fulfilling all the conditions to short this. So, and I want to look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin showing us this as well in the 5-minute time frame that we can be pulling downward with this extension to the upper Bollinger. So this is showing that we very likely will be seeing some selling within the equities as well. Let's see. Okay, the Iranian response stressed that ending the war must include all fronts, including resistance factions. Iran tells US aggression and assassinations must end. Okay, so, they're just saying that they want to stop being attacked. Makes sense. Okay, and I'm tacking on a couple more short positions into this, as again, this is still fulfilling everything I'm looking for within the short. With the VVIX pulling down here slightly, we can be expecting the retest at the 20-mile range, which it is coming up very soon here. So retesting of that 20-mile very, very likely will lead to a bounce to the upside. So we will be looking for that. But I do want to circle around to everything really quick just to make sure. See, this still looks good, and this is semiconductors. So semiconductors hold the majority of the equity weight. This looks very good to closing to the 336.82 downside. Can't talk today. In QQQ, even though we are seeing that extension up here, it's still fulfilling all the conditions of the short position. So we're still looking for that. I think we're still seeing a little bit of selling within here as well. little bit of buying within liquid, but I am seeing a little bit of that rejection at this 20 mile range. So very likely that will be pulling back downward, which would mean selling on the day. Now, with NVIDIA being pushed down so far into the lower Bollinger, that does create the conditions for buying. So potentially that can occur, is that we can see NVIDIA gain quite a lot of weight on the day and really carry the buying to the upside. But inversely, we see Microsoft here with that absurd buying on the day should be carrying some selling weight to the downside. So semiconductors seeing a little bit of a rejection in there. SPY, we're still looking for some structure, potentially on the 1 minute time frame here. We can be seeing this and shoulders. So we will be looking for this to play out. And that head and shoulders playing out would give us the move down on the 5 minute time frame as well. Seeing a little bit of a bounce within VVIX here, which again, every single penny to the upside within VVIX means that dealers have bought positions, to hedge against the upside. So very, very convinced about this short position here. We should be seeing this head and shoulders on the 5 minute or on the 1 minute time frame, which again would carry over to the 5 minute time frame of pulling down towards that 20 mile range. So we're looking for that to complete. Semiconductors really heading down here. So on the 1 minute time frame, pulling down to this 336.82, completing that inverse cup. From the bottom of that inverse cup, we should be expecting a little bit of bullish structure to the upside prior to further downside. Okay, so that's what we're looking for out of semiconductors. QQQ, seeing a little bit of selling taking place, seeing a little bit of that same head and shoulders pattern. So we are looking for this head and shoulders within QQQ as well. That would be a very nice position. So we are seeing the bearish structure at the top of the cup that we are looking for throughout the SPY, QQQ. Now on SPY, the 20 minute, the 20 mile is currently at the 651.81. So our level has pulled up slightly, but with some of the bearish conditions we are seeing on the day, um, we might be holding slightly lower than that level. But again, just rule of thumb as always, short position, always close the majority of it at the 20 mile range. If you have runners, then we allow them to run. But we are going to just be going over the entirety of the day just to make sure that, our short position will be carrying some major weight to the downside. So Iran is just demanding assurances that the conflict won't occur again. And they're saying that they're warning that, any negotiations shouldn't include deceptions. Because basically every time we say that we're going to negotiate with them, we end up blowing them up. So, okay. Now we do see a little bit of a break within this head and shoulders here on the 1 minute time frame. Little bit of a cup and handle, but we will be looking for that right shoulder still. Even within this potential micro cup, we're expecting this to be pulling downward, top of the cup, form the handle to the downside. That would give us the creation of beginning of that right shoulder. Now our VVIX here, again, it did pull down all the way to the 121 or 120.87, and it is starting to pull back up again. So this is very indicative of selling on the day. We can actually get our price action. Now 30-minute time frame is showing us that potentially we do have some room to the downside as well. If we continue to reject this upper Bollinger range on 30-minute time frame, which so far potentially looks like we can be, um, but this upside on the 30-minute time frame can be that 655.75. So we will be watching for that. But on the 30-minute time frame here, it is showing that potentially we can be pulling back down towards this 20 mile range. Pulling back down to that range would be the 653.04. So again, we are just looking for continuation within the structure. Now we are going to be very careful to make sure that this isn't going to turn into a cup and handle and break out. Not really expecting that, but we do have semiconductors pushed down quite a bit on the day, which again, that can create the conditions for buying to the upside. QQQ, we did not see this cup form here, so technically this head and shoulders is still holding weight, but we do need to see the selling start to occur. NVIDIA potentially inverse head and shoulders here. We do see that inverse cup closed right there. So NVIDIA is telling us that there's still quite a bit of downside on it. Just have to be careful though because it is pushed to the downside already. So it can create buying. Now I want to look at the daily time frame really quick because I want to see where our moving averages are at. So our 5 mod currently is at the 653.65. If we're going to be having a 5 mod rejection today, which it looks very likely we will be, and it would be rejecting, I can't talk, all the way back down, basically right to this 650 range. There is a very large inverse cup forming there. So that is one thing we are looking for. Delete this drawing. Now with the 5 mile at the 653.67 on the daily time frame, we can be seeing the upper bounds of the 5 mile if today is going to be a full 5 mile test. So the upper bounds would be close to that 655.60 range. But again, I'm not expecting us to see that. I want to look at the VVIX really quick. Still seeing some chop in here, but again, every single penny to the upside within the VVIX is super important. Does mean that big money is hedging the downside. Take a look at the 1 minute time frame here. So 1 minute time frame, and I want to turn off the images. We are looking for this inverse cup to close all the way to the downside, which would be much closer to that 653.10 range. That inverse cup closing the downside would invalidate any of the potential bullish structure we are seeing. So we will be looking for that to validate. I want to look at the VVIX again because we did see it pulling up. So 121.47. Sorry, I've not been looking at chat too much. Just a ton to go over on the day just to make sure we're not going to be getting burned here. Semiconductors still seeing plenty of selling. QQ. Now with QQQ we do have to be very careful because on the 1 minute time frame, potentially we do have this cup and handle forming. So a breakout in that would pretty much kill the short positions. So we are looking at that. I want to circle back to USO really quick. So we are seeing a pull down in USO still. We do see this inverse cup closed to the downside, which should mean we should be expecting bullish structure, at least pull up back towards that 20 mile range. So this would indicate selling on the day. So we are looking for that. SPY, bit of a breakout here still. Rejecting the head and shoulders. Not an easy day so far. And the main reason why it hasn't been an easy day is even though we did get our entry at the 650.73, that's on the 1 minute time frame anyway. On the 5 minute time frame, we did not get the entry into the lower Bollinger, so technically the call entry wasn't really set up for the upside. Even though technically we did get the $4 upside, um, in terms of the entry was not primed for that. Now, for the short position here, even though we are seeing this continuing to push against this upper Bollinger and holding the level pretty extended, this should mean that the short position will be good because generally extensions into the upper Bollinger don't last very long than the 5 minute time frame. A good example is right here, which it's not during the market session, but it's still a very good example where within that 5 minute time frame, we see it, extending, and then it finally creates the conditions to sell downward. So even with this extension to the upper Bollinger here, I do like these short positions. Again, even with some of these cups closing, we should be expecting the bearish structure at the top. Same with QQQ. Should be expecting bearish structure at the top and the short to the downside. We'll be looking for some of this bullish structure to invalidate here on the 1 minute time frame. So invalidation of the bullish structure here would create a double top. From that double top, create this inverse cup to the downside. So we are looking for that. In Microsoft, seeing a bit of bearish structure as well. So we are going to be looking for some of these inverse cups to close. The dollar has been slightly elevated. So that is a bearish signal. Bitcoin, we talked about this. We are looking for Bitcoin to sell off a bit today, which would be taking some of our equity weight to the downside. So I want to watch this 1 minute time frame very, very closely. Really looking for this push downward into the lower Bollinger on the 1 minute time frame on QQQ. This would invalidate pretty much all the bearish structure we've had on the day. So that would be a very good thing for the short positions. Same thing for SPY here. We're looking for the push down to the 652.80. That would invalidate all of the bullish structure we are seeing on the day. And I want to take a look at the VVIX while this is going on. VIX pulling down slightly, but still very elevated. So we will keep our eye on that very closely. And USO, pulling up from this lower Bollinger, but still weakening a bit on the day. So we are expecting this push to the downside on the 1 minute time frame. Same for QQQ here. Microsoft is closing this cup on the 1 minute time frame to the downside. So that is a good signal for our bearish positions. It creates this potential for the head and shoulders. So that is a very good signal on the day. Now, NVIDIA. Let's check. NVIDIA, excuse me. In NVIDIA, we're continuing to see breakdown here, which again, with it being pushed into the lower Bollinger, it can pop back up. So we are looking for that. See if that occurs. QQQ, 1 minute time frame. We are looking for the rejection off of this 20 mile here. Rejection from the 20 mile would give us our inverse cup close to the downside. So we are looking for that. Same with SPY here. Go ahead and look at BVIX. Reason why we haven't closed the short positions yet is we still see some bearishness within the day. Oh, and even within the VVIX here, with it pulling down slightly, and that can create the conditions where it can pull back upward. So with it being pulled down here, we will be looking for it to pop back up here again, but we will be keeping a close eye on that. Now I want to look at the news again just because there is some major news going on with some of the deals in Iran and everything, so okay, so let's see. So there's still no arrangement for negotiations, no plans for talks yet. Now, continued buying from here will tell us that we will need to close the short positions. So we're watching this extremely closely. Yeah, go ahead and close them. We're gonna wait for another entry into the upper Bollinger again. It's very likely they're trying to push for the upper Bollinger on the 30-minute time frame here. So we're gonna be looking for the entry onto that. Now I want to take a look at the VVIX. It is still pulling down, so now that we're looking for the entry into the upside further, we are looking for this to push down even further than that. Cup closed, looking for the handle to the upside. See the same thing out of QQQ here. So extremely likely we pull back up to the 584.64. Semiconductors did pull up to their upper Bollinger. Seeing a little bit of a rejection in here, which is the 1 minute time frame. That doesn't matter too much. So 5 minute time frame, again, and be creating that buying to the upside. Upside on semiconductors is all the way up at the 338.50. So essentially we do still have a little bit of room here prior to fully going short on that. So bad entry. This makes the fourth missed trade in roughly 2 months. Okay. Unfortunate, but it does happen. So we are looking for our additional upside here. From that upside, we will be looking for the short position. The VIX, we are looking for this to pull downward. And USO, we're still seeing it pulling downward. Did invalidate any previous bullish cup to the upside there with that inverse cup. So still plenty of downside with an oil here. On the 1 minute time frame, we should be seeing this 20-mile range have a upside bounce. From that upside bounce, it should give us that room we're looking for on the 30-minute time frame. And with semiconductors here, pulling up to the 338.51 would give us the upside bounce that we would be looking for. Watch them now short it just to spite me. No, I'm still expecting that bounce there. Now, let's see if they invalidate this previous cup. And I'm really looking for buying in here to take us up to that 655 range on the day. The upside bounce looks very good. It would take us basically all the way up to that 655, um, 71, likely slightly higher than that. But that's what we're looking for here. Looking for that 655.70. No, I'm not taking calls up to that point. Again, my entry will be at the lower Bollinger or upper Bollinger on the 5-minute time frame. So we're waiting for our price action to take the upside so that we can short into this further. Now our volatility pushing up very slightly, but again we should be seeing it pull downward. It's at 121.61 or at 120.61 currently. Bitcoin did pull down to the 20 mile. So we are going to be looking for either a bounce or a rejection here. Rejection here would be showing that very likely we would be seeing further selling on the day. Bounce here would be likely telling us that we should be seeing our 655.80 range. So that's what we're looking for. That's 655.80 on the 5-minute time frame. That does coincide with the upper Bollinger at the 655.23 or 29, excuse me. So we are looking for that upside prior to further shorting. Now we're still seeing selling within the hick here, which is a bearish signal. Seeing some of that buying within QQQ. Very likely going to be seeing that 20-mile range coming in on semiconductors here. So again, that's at the 338.47. So that should support that 655.33 upside. And from that, we would short into that. So BVIX pulling down still, so it's supporting that upside push. A little bit of buying in oil can support selling. So I'll look at the news again. Still no news yet, so should expect that level. Yeah, pretty wild chop for the early session, but it should lead to a very nice sell on the day that we're looking for anyway. Sorry, I had to mute my mic for a second. Okay. Anyway, we're looking for our upside here. Um, I did sell the puts that I took earlier. Again, we're just waiting for the upside. Now, I do have some calls going. I don't suggest taking that, but I do have some calls just to chase this 655 push. Um, Again, I don't suggest taking that, but there is roughly that dollar of upside. I do want to try to take that if we're going to get it. Again, it's not an entry I suggest. Um, so it is a risky position, but I am looking for this call upside to be taken or that 655, 72 range looks extremely good throughout multiple time frames. So looking for that to play out. 1 minute time frame, we're seeing multiple up and handles. From this handle, we're seeing a a smaller cup and handle. Sorry, I can't talk today. So we should be seeing the breakout within the smaller handle here. From that smaller handle, should be pushing us into that 655 range. So we're looking for that. Our volatility here to make sure we're watching that very close. Can actually find it because I'm blind. At 120.40, so still pulling down on the day. Still very elevated though, so slightly sketchy. Very heavy chop here. But even on the 5 minute time frame, our price is telling us that we're either going to be pushing into this upper Bollinger or we're going to be having a massive rejection to the 20 mall. So no, I don't have puts currently, but I'm expecting that upside push prior to the 20 mall. If they do the 20 mall before that, then they're just trying to work me today, but should be seeing that upside. Especially as semiconductors here. Plenty of upside within the 5 minute time frame. So we should be fully anticipating that 338.40. And I believe we see a lot of this out of NVIDIA too. So with NVIDIA pushing down to the lower Bollinger, it's been pretty much riding it the entire session. So we should be expecting some upside reprieve here very soon out of NVIDIA. Upside reprieve would take us basically up to that 175.90. So that would be a very large push upward for the market overall. So that's what we're looking for. I want to take a look at oil. Oil was pulling back up towards the 116 range, but getting to reject that again. Our VVIX still chopping in this range, but has pulled up a few cents. But again, remember every single penny upward within the VVIX is very important. And of course, they're deciding to screw me here. So let's see. So this is a perfect example why I said don't take that call entry even though I have some calls going. Exact example of why not to do that. Can pull down towards the 5 minute on the or the 20 mile on the 5 minute time frame, so can burn positions very easily that way. But I do see a lot of upside. especially out of NVIDIA. Microsoft can still sell downward a little bit on the day. It did pull upward. We were looking for this to kind of be that downward catalyst on the day, but it is starting to pull towards this 20 mile range. So potentially we can hit the 20 mile, see an upward bounce. So we will be looking for that. 20 miles at the 371.33. Mainly looking for a bounce out of NVIDIA right now. That would be the major decider in what takes the weight on the day. Still holding my call. I'm still fully expecting this 655 here, just based off these structures we have been seeing so far. VVIX pulled down very slightly, so 120.42, which is telling us that potentially we can be seeing this upside push here. So a lot of signals telling us that we should be seeing that upside, even though we're seeing a lot of conflicting signals telling us that we should be shorting the day. So overall, looking for the upside push so that we can short. Okay, I think that's going to be the plan here. They did really mess us up on this first entry though, and that is the fourth missed trade within 2 months time plus now. So do apologize for that, but sometimes that can happen. It's just, one of the unfortunates we do have to deal with. However, we move forward. We wait for the next position, which again, we are looking for the upside here so that we can short. A lot of different symbols tell us that we should have our upside. VVIX pulling down, very indicative of pushing the upside as well. Seeing bear or bullish structure, the 5 minute or in the 1 minute time frame. As long as we don't see a major rejection here, of course. Yeah, that should be a handle on this micro cup. Down for the handle, push the upside. So that breakout should be good. QQQ, we do have to be a little cautious because it is showing bearish structure. Which again, we've been seeing a ton of just conflicting structure from the SPY, semiconductors, and tech. Semiconductors here forming a bit of a head and shoulders on the 1 minute time frame, but it is pushing the bottom Bollinger, so we should be expecting the push up to the upper Bollinger, or excuse me, the 20 mile on the 1 minute time frame, which would push us up towards that 20 mile on the 5 minute time frame. So those connect. I'll SPY. And seeing that cup and handle breaking out on the SPY here. So the upside should be very good. Geez, I cannot stop yawning today. They shouldn't be too much different. I believe the stream delay is only just a few seconds, if anything. Sorry about that. I had to mute my mic for a moment. No, our prices shouldn't be different. Now, on the futures though, if you don't pay for the real-time updating, I forgot what it's called, then our VVIX prices will show different. Just purely because I do pay for that. Um, you know, 15-minute or to not have the 15-minute delay. Oil is pulling down quite a bit, so this should be showing that we should be seeing buying in the day, and of course, as I say that, we are seeing selling. Just give us a good entry already. QQQ, we're looking for this head and shoulders slash inverse cup and handle, not to complete here. So again, we do want to see the upside prior to the short. Really want to see this out semiconductors. This is really where the large weight needs to come from. Hold on, we got something in the news. Let's see. Nothing important, just some stuff out of Qatar. Okay, now SPY starting to show bearish structure, of course. So 1 minute time frame, seeing this inverse cup and handle. 5 minute time frame, this is starting to allude towards that 653 little Bollinger push. Now I want to look at the BVIX. Is pulling up slightly, so it's at 120.63. It was all the way down to the 120.30. We're seeing a little bit of selling out of liquid here, but we are above the 20 mile on the 5 minute time frame. So the expectation should be either we're going to have that major bounce to the upside, or we're going to complete this inverse cup to the downside. So we will be watching that very closely. We've been seeing selling throughout the day overall, but a little bit of bullish structure here. So we're going to see if that completes. Bitcoin, see a little bit of buying back up towards the top. So potentially some bullish structure forming in there. Very, very, very choppy day so far. Massive consolidation range in here. So we do need to see a break out of it. Basically right in there. Okay, so let's see what's going on. Now, I want to take a look at semiconductors. Again, I'm still expecting the push upside out of semis. I want to look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA has pushed a new low of the day, but we are still looking for this to push back up to the middle Bollinger. So that would take us up to the 175.64. So we are expecting that buying out of NVIDIA. Some of that buying we're expecting out of the SPY finally. There we go. Okay, so with this buying occurring finally, we should be looking for the exit at the 30-minute time frame or 5 minute time frame, excuse me, closer to the 655.61. And it is just a quick push, so maybe it's a news thing. Okay, SPY. Okay, nope, they're just stopping everybody out. Alright, so I'm out of my calls. Day is not going very well. Okay, so we finally see our push down to the 20 mile here. And I want to see the VVIX. It had a pretty large push to the downside, but it was bought up almost immediately. Went all the way down to 119.96. Back up to the 120.51. Okay, so 1 minute time frame, we see this inverse cup closed, which is very, very conflicting because it did set this new high. Essentially a new high into a new low. So we are going to be looking for first cup to the downside, 5 minute time frame. Not looking like it will offer us that entry. Terrible day. Okay. Alright, I want to take a look at QQQ and everything. QQQ, we finally see that breakdown. Nvidia's just pushing new lows on the day. What are you digging for? So Nvidia's aiming for this 173.98. That's that's just silly. Okay. Microsoft here. Did see the head and shoulders play out that we expected. Well, except they kind of cut us out of our puts though. Oh, what a fumble. Okay. All right. So they did catch me out of the puts, even though that's what we were looking. Did not give us our entry into the additional puts here. So really cut us out of the move there on the day. Does look like it's starting to fill this inverse cup to the downside, which would be that 650, 650.85. Yeah, very hard day. Um, that's unfortunate. Okay, but with that said, let's go ahead and start looking for some different trades here. So we do have NVIDIA pushing down towards the bottom of the cup. With NVIDIA pushing down, that does create the room to the upside on semiconductors. With SPY pushing down below this 5 minute time frame or below this 20 mile on the 5 minutes, this can give the calls to the upside Granted, this isn't the type of position I usually look for, but with semiconductors being at the bottom there, that does create some very potential upside. So I am going to be looking for some calls here. Now again, this isn't my prime entry at all. This isn't what I look for calls. So you do have to take at your own risk a little bit. Now, with these, I am looking for some socks as puts. Okay, socks as puts. Come on. I want that 38 strike, which is currently about $80. Okay, so this should give us quite a bit of downside here, and I'm looking at Success right now. Success should pull down all the way to that 38.37. This is a leveraged ETF, so that is quite a bit of downside. In SPY, I'm still targeting the 655. Even with some of the selling we have seen on the day, that's where our 5-minute upper Bollinger is at. Now on the VVIX, we are seeing a bit of a pull upward here to the 121.38. So potentially still some further downside. Again, this usually isn't the type of position I'm wanting. I usually do not take positions at the 20 MA unless I see um, a lot of reason to do so. But with semiconductors right now, I do see the short position being available, so I do want that. Okay, so I am in Success puts. That's suggesting that we will be seeing upside within semiconductors. Okay, so that's basically the same as taking a call in this range. I'm just wanting to see, some of that retracement back to the 337.50. So that is what we will be looking for. And I want to see NVIDIA as well, just to make sure. Yeah, NVIDIA should be seeing this push upward. Remember, this was the bottom of a very large cup, or very large inverse cup. So we should be seeing some bullishness to the upside very soon within NVIDIA. That would support our puts on Success, basically calls on SOX. Okay, so I want to look at the VVIX here. Now that we are still targeting some of the upside, it is still very elevated. So with this upside target, you do have to be cautious because This can absolutely just crash right down, but I am seeing this room within semiconductors, so I really do want to capitalize on that. QQQ, heavy selling downward as well. That Head and Shoulders did play out, which unfortunately we missed. QQQ really was probably the trade of the day rather than SPY, but oh well, sometimes that happens. With QQQ starting to sell downward, we can be seeing the 580.46. So that is a very real expectation here. Microsoft, we still have plenty of room to sell to the downside, so that can continue to take quite a bit of weight out of the day. So we will be looking for that. With it being at the 20 mile range, actually we can be seeing bounce to the upside as well. So Microsoft, we will be needing to watch very closely. Nvidia's just been digging downward the entire day. That would have been a really solid short position actually on the day if we caught that right there. But we didn't. On success, I'm taking the 83 or the 38 puts, excuse me. Nvidia is just continuing to push new lows. And with semiconductors here, even on the 30-minute time frame, semiconductors are telling us that there is room within the upside entry. So we should be seeing a bounce. Let's check our VVIX. VVIX is still pulling upward towards 122.01. So that is still showing selling on the day. Just really expecting a bounce out of semiconductors here that we have not gotten. Both in that range and in there. We did have a small bounce in here, but we did not get up to the 20 mile. So we're looking for that support bounce. Now SPY can push downward towards the, hold on. Sorry, my wife's getting my daughter ready. Okay, so the low is 650.76, so we can pull all the way down to that prior to a bounce, but again, we are looking for a bounce here. We did start to close this inverse cup. And with QQQ here, should be seeing a bounce. Same with NVIDIA. And same with semiconductors. So we should be seeing our bounce. I am gonna go mute for a couple minutes just to get my daughter in the car and everything. But we are basically in semiconductor calls to the upside. We are looking for the 337.15. Now, if you're in success with me, you basically will be looking at the symbol SOX while playing this position. So currently I am in the 38 puts. That will take us, roughly to this 38.50 range. Um, and harvest the premium from that. So, this move up to the 337.15 would be that move in success to the downside. So we are looking for that, looking for this upside support bounce overall. VVIX did pull all the way to the 122.25 and is starting to pull down again. So it's at 121.95. So this is supporting our bounce slightly here. So we will go ahead and watch that, but I'm going to be mute for just a couple minutes while I get my daughter in the car. So I will be right back, everybody. Buddy, I am back. I apologize for the AFK slash mute. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. It looks like we're getting our bounce out of semiconductors. It's cool. Getting our bounce out of SPY. That's cool. CRVVX. Seeing a little bit of rejection in here. That's cool. Q, a little bit of buying in there. That is cool. We should be heavily anticipating head and shoulders on the day. So from this upside, at the bottom of this inverse cup, we will be looking to take shorts into this, or on top of this right shoulder. Once we get there, what else do we got going on? Let's check the dollar. Let's check Bitcoin. Just go over everything. Dollar slightly elevated. See that inverse head and shoulders. Very likely see that play out to the upside today, which would give us our selling. Bitcoin, we see this double top, which again does allude to selling on the day. So we should be seeing that small bounce into the sell. Nvidia has seen a little bit of upside here. Looking quite a bit further still. Um, Looking a lot closer to that 175 range. QQQ. Same thing, semiconductors. Did pull all the way to the 335.40, back down to the 334.20. And SPY here on the 5-minute time frame. Can be seeing this very large head and shoulders playing out. So to be very cautious of that. The 20 MA is currently at the 653.16. So while I'm not really looking for that position to take puts, um, that would fill a lot of this liquidity for this head and shoulders on the day. So we will be looking at that very closely. DVIX did pull down all the way to the 121.47. It is ticking back upward very slightly again, so it's at the 121.59. Again, very elevated. We do need to be concerned about that. It's semiconductors on the 1-minute time frame here. So on the 1-minute time frame, see this very clear move from the lower Bollinger to the upper Bollinger. From the upper Bollinger, we are seeing this 20 MA being tested on the 1-minute time frame. From the 20 MA being tested, we should be expecting this bounce back up to the upside, as there is a very well defined cup and handle forming here. So we do have selling conditions on the day, but we do see bounce correlating with what we're expecting. Same with QQQ, that would take us all the way to that 582.56. So that should be very good bounce. Now, it's extremely likely today that this is going to be that major short entry. Um, we just have to be very cautious, because if they decide to start buying on the day, um, that short would get blown out of the water very quickly. So it's a bit concerning. Um, but we do see the bearish structure. Okay, we do see bearish structure throughout many symbols. Bitcoin here, we finally have this inverse cup closing. Bottom of the cup. be expecting some upside before further downside. So that correlates with the bounce we are expecting to see. The video, we're still looking for the 174.80 range. QQQ, closer again to that 100 or 582.54. Now we'll look at semiconductors again. Now semiconductors, we are looking for this cup and handle to play out. So assuming that does, this handle would take us back up to the 335.50 essentially, and then start breaking out from that. Tough day, but we will try to get some good trades in here. That's great, Trey. Love to hear it. I wish we kept our puts from the open, but that chop did get us, unfortunately. But I guess it's a good reminder that when the VVIX is elevated, you really can't be playing the upside too much, because they will just take that upside from you at any moment. QQQ, we are seeing this cup and handle playing out. So even though I did just make a statement about upside, I am expecting the upside should take us all the way to the 5 mile on the, or the 20 mile on the 5-minute time frame. Same with SPY here. We are seeing this starting to curl up. So we should be expecting that 653.20. Semiconductors, that should mean should be seeing our upside. Sorry, my cat just jumped on my lap and stuck her claws into my side. Oh, that's fun. Let's take a look at oil. Oil is elevated, so again, this is the most bearish signal you need. That potentially we can be heading right back up to this 118 level. BVIX still just chopping in this range, but slightly pulling down. Semiconductors starting to pull back up again. Really looking for that cup and handle to fully fill out. Yeah, tough day today. See the 1-minute time frame on SPY. If we should still be expecting this cup and handle to break out. Still fully expecting that 653.20. EVIX still chopping, so that is something we do have to be cautious of. Let's see NVIDIA really quick. Now NVIDIA, we're still expecting that push upward, so still have plenty of room within NVIDIA. Yes, I will be streaming tomorrow as well, so same time, I'll be streaming in the morning, and hopefully we won't miss our entry. Very tough day though. They really caught us out here when I saw this on the SPY, when they brought us from our entry all the way back up to closing this cup. Um, that was my exit anyway to see that, okay, potentially we're going to be heading up to that 655 range. Well, they immediately took us almost from that 655 all the way to the 652. So, um, I got bull trapped perfectly with that one. But from that bull trap, had the inverse cup close. Now we're potentially working on this handle. So that's what we're working on, evaluating where that handle is going to be going. If it's going to be taking us down to the downside still, or if we're going to have a little bit of this upside reprieve that I'm expecting out of NVIDIA and semiconductors. So that's what we're looking at. I do want to open up the news again in just a second. While I don't think anything significant is happening yet, just want to be sure. Open the video here really quick, and then I pull up the news. Okay, Bitcoin's dropping like a rock. That is not a good signal. Okay, let's see everything that there's been a lot posted in the last few minutes. Hold on. There's been 40 different things posted in the last 10 minutes on the news thing, so give me 1 second. Okay, so Witkoff says became clear in previous meetings with Iran that we could not make a deal of no enrichment whatsoever, decommissioning of 3 nuclear sites, no stockpiling of materials, turning all enriched material to USA. So Iran says that the Iranians maintain their right to enrich uranium. Iranians have continually turned down US requests during discussions. Sorry, I'm just reading over this. Okay, so nothing super significant coming out other than our US envoy basically, coming back saying what he's been trying to discuss with the Iranians. And so far they haven't been willing to really work with us, which honestly no surprise there. So very likely that's what caused that very large sell down that we did see earlier. Now on QQQ, we are potentially seeing this right shoulder taking form. So we do have to be very, very cautious here if we're expecting any upside. Nvidia selling a little bit as well. And I want to take a look at USO because USO is probably was up slightly, but it is pulling back a little bit. I want to see the VVIX. It was at the 121.50. It's at the 121.29 currently. So pulling back slightly. Again, really looking for this push upward in NVIDIA. Um, Even with a lot of the selling we are seeing taking place. Say same on semiconductors. We should still be anticipating this 335.96 range. By seeing potentially this head and shoulders really starting to take form. Just have to be very, very cautious of that. The head and shoulders is extremely strong. It's just I'm mainly looking at NVIDIA to see if we're going to get this upside support bounce. See, it's probably Microsoft selling off during this time. Let's see, Microsoft. Yep, Microsoft selling off. That would have been a super short position today. Still expecting this push upward in semiconductors though, prior to fully selling off, but we will see. That inverse cup and handle played out very, very well on Bitcoin. Still expecting that upward push in semiconductors. And I want to look at the VVIX. Still pulling down slightly. It did pull down all the way to the 121.27, so up a few cents, but still showing that weakness to the downside. Still targeting this 335.98 on semiconductors. Nvidia very, very, very likely going to hit that 174.64. Really expecting QQQ to push up further before building this right shoulder completely. I really do expect it to head up towards that 20 mile on the 5 minute time frame, which would still be roughly $1.40 from where we're at. So still plenty of potential upside here before we really fully start selling. At least that's what I'm seeing anyway. Same with semiconductors here. very, very likely we aim for that true 5 minute 20 mod or yeah, 5 minute 20 mod test. Same for SPY here, but we are seeing a little bit of a breakdown. VVIX is still just chopping. It's at that 121.27. Would like to see a large push downward to signify that we are going to get a little bit of that upside reprieve before fully heading downward. Now on NVIDIA, on the 1 minute time frame, we can be seeing a little bit of this reprieve just because we were at the upper Bollinger for a little bit. Not really expecting a whole lot though, as we're pretty much already at the 1 minute 20 mile. So not expecting too much further downside before pushing back up. However, again, some of the selling throughout the overall day can definitely take the overall weight, but we do see this little gap in a lot of different symbols. I can't talk. A lot of different symbols right now, and we want to make sure that we're not going to be shorting prior to that because that would really just kill all the contracts. Um, so yeah, we really do want to see some of this upside pushed prior to entering back into short positions. Mainly looking for this out in the video here. But we do have a couple different symbols we can be looking, really watching for. Microsoft still has some room to the downside, so that could still be taking us, through some chop. And I guess this is a really good opportunity to talk about chop days. So on days where we're seeing a lot of mixed signals, where today we saw a ton of potential cups earlier, with a bunch of potential head and shoulders, with a bunch of potential inverse cups and handles. We were seeing bullish and bearish structure, while we were also seeing a very elevated VVIX. So there's a lot of signals that were telling us that, um, even though we did see the potential upside bullish structures, we really should have not tried to play against that in terms of the day. We should have followed the head and shoulders, stayed within this short position, and those who did end up, making quite a bit of money off of that. But um, unfortunately, I did get shaken out of that primarily because of that large pull up to the almost 655, which made it look like it was going to have a cup and handle type breakout. So that's primarily what caught me off, but following our rules still stated that as we were within the upper Bollinger, we should have been holding that short position until the 20 mile. But it did pull up well above where we entered the short, so um, was a little concerning. Let me circle back to NVIDIA. Really waiting for NVIDIA to break out. Starting to see some weight push back into semiconductors. So we are looking for that 335.70 range. Now this head and shoulders on the 5-minute time frame on SPY is starting to look very, very strong. This is definitely alluding to pulling back to the lower Bollinger here, which would be that 650. Now our VVIX still hovering around this point, but still pulling up slightly, and even pulling up slightly is still very indicative of selling. So that is telling us that very, very likely we will be selling. Now, I do need to make a quick phone call, so I'll be right back, but I am going to be watching the chat. But we are watching for semiconductors. We do want to see this break to the upside, but there is a lot of selling over the overall SPY, QQQ. Yeah, we're seeing this head and shoulders playing out. Very, very likely we're going to be seeing some major downside today. So it's unfortunate that we did get shooken out of those puts earlier, but it's just one of those days. Um, with that said though, I will be right back, but I will be watching chat and hopefully it won't be too long. I just need to make a quick phone call. Apologize for that, everybody. Phone call took a little while. All right. So I did type some things in chat while I was on the phone. I did open some TQQQ puts for next week. Now, the reason why I did this is because on the daily time frame, and let's pull up our moving averages and everything, we have the 5 mile currently at the 653.10. Basically, just gonna call it the 653. Which means that if we continue to reject at this range, which we're seeing the structure to do so, 5 minute time frame, we see a very large head and shoulders. 30-minute time frame, we see this very large inverse cup with this handle being built, which is telling us extremely likely that this big block of liquidity is wanting to be taken out. Okay, so this would be a lower Bollinger push on the daily time frame. Sorry, I can't talk. Been sick. I'm always sick, I swear. Wonder if there's something wrong with my house. Lower time or lower Bollinger on the daily time frame. It's at the 644.24. So if we're going to secure that level and push down, we have a very long way to go. We have quite a lot of liquidity to cut through. So if we're going to take that level, um, our downside is absolutely massive. And that's going to be the goal of these TQQQ calls or puts is to secure that massive downside that we're targeting throughout SPY and QQQ. On TQQQ, it would take us down all the way to that 41.22, probably well below that. But those are for next week. Um, we did see a lot of different signals that we were looking for. Now, go ahead and go to the 5 minute time frame here. Apologize for sounding all nasally. I've been super congested. Anyway, 5 minute time frame, semiconductors. We finally got our push upward. Now, on that push upward, um, we needed to be out of those SOXS calls. That's when I sold mine. If you haven't sold yours yet, technically you still have an entry to do so. I mean on those SOXS puts, not calls. SOXS calls are basically like semiconductor puts. SOXS puts are like semiconductor calls. So we were trying to take the calls from the downside here to this 20 mile range. From this 20 mile, we are looking for a rejection back down to the lower Bollinger. Now on NVIDIA, and this should correlate with it very well. On NVIDIA, we did expect this move from the 173 up to the 20 mile. Finally secured that 20 mile level. And from this 20 mile level, we are expecting bearish structure. So very likely some form of micro head and shoulders, something like that to continue this very large inverse cup that we've completed to the downside. So that's what we're looking for out of the video. Now out of Microsoft, it is just dying. I so wish we took puts on that today. That would have been just a killer position. Anyway, with Microsoft, this has just been forming constant inverse cups to the downside. Well, inverse cups slash head and shoulders to the downside throughout the majority of the time frames. If my Weeble will load, there we go. See this a lot better on the hourly. Inverse cup, head and shoulders. So a lot of bearish structure here going on with Microsoft. Um, this gap at the bottom of Microsoft is all the way at the 342. So that's telling us that Microsoft potentially could be losing, a whole $25, which that would definitely correlate with the major selling we're, anticipating to see out of QQQ, SPY, Nvidia, and some of these other names. So that's what we're looking for. This head and shoulders ended up playing out very well, even though it is slightly over to the right more. That played out extremely well. Okay, so today was a little bit of a difficult day. Um, just that Trump child thing popped up. Um, anyway, let's see. Now, I do want to take a look at USO because USO is continuing to build bullish structure to the upside. See not only the cup and handle forming here, but the inverse head and shoulders, this cup closing. Now with this cup closing, we can anticipate a small handle before a further breakout up towards the 118, 120 range. So oil is looking very bullish right now, which is not a good thing for the market. TLT has been seeing some selling, very likely due to the oil volatility. Semiconductors, still just anticipating our rejection there. QQQ, just still anticipating our rejection there. Let's check the VVIX. VVIX has just been super, 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 super elevated all day long. So not much to say about that. I do sort of anticipate it pulling up to this 123 plus range into the close today, as volatility tends to usually start out very gradual and then pick up quickly. SPY is still seeing this head and shoulders. Go ahead and delete some of this prior structure that we no longer need. This was our missed entry, which I actually want to mark this. Reason why I'm marking this, even though I know almost exactly what I made the mistakes on here, it's still good to mark your mistakes because you want to be able to study this over. Okay. There is multiple different brokers that offer like that real-time trading again where you can basically retrade that day over. Um with us, or I shouldn't say us, I at least made the mistake to close the put here again because I saw potentially that cup closing to the upside. So that was a mistake, um, which is a little hard to counteract because this was built very, very well. But I'm sure, yep, within that 1 minute time frame, I'm sure that there's some signals in here we could use. See how there is this first cup to the downside, which says my OBS disconnected, but I don't think it did because I still see it on my phone. Okay, saw this invalidation of this bullish cup, um, basically right in this range. Now, With that said, kind of just want to look at this for a moment. I know this doesn't really apply to the current price action, but it is important that I see this. See, because then I saw this breakdown there, and that looked really good to keep the puts going. But then we had this massive candle to the upside, which from there, that made it look like a bullish cup, which is why I cut my puts out right there. A very, very difficult bull trap or bear trap. The bull trap. I'm all messed up today. But very difficult. And technically, they did give us the short entry too, because they did pull above that for Bollinger on the 1 minute time frame. So, very difficult. But I think if we watch the chop better next time, we can catch that. Now, for the rest of the day, we are seeing this structure continuing to break down. So we should basically see inverse cup, create an inverse handle, which also creates an inverse cup, which again, we should be expecting an inverse handle, continue to create lower lows until we finally break into this very large box of liquidity. So that's kind of the expectation here. Now, one thing that does need to be noted is that the 5 mont is currently at the 653.09. So that means the lower bounds of the 5 mont can basically be right at that 651. So we can be doing a very difficult and large 5 mont test. So as of yesterday, we tested the upper bounds of the 5 mont. Today, we could be testing the lower bounds of the 5 mont to head upward. Now, I'm not fully on board with that heading upward. I do think that market is trying to close a lot of these structures to the downside, and we do see that throughout some of these smaller time frames. If I could, it's not so cluttered. See this invalidation of, hold on, I want to delete this so that everybody can actually see what I'm talking about. Some of these structures. Seeing this invalidation of this inverse head and shoulders here. And the invalidation comes in the form of this very large inverse cup. Okay, so with that invalidating this bullish structure, we can now look at this as bearish structure. So with this being bearish structure, we can really start to anticipate that the very high likelihood is we're going to be trying to close this cup back down towards that 641 range. Because from this smaller inverse cup right there, we should be expecting a further push downward. Okay, and that further push downward would fulfill the conditions of that larger inverse cup, should take all of that liquidity, and that would be a very, very large move to the downside. Now, our VVIX is pulling back slightly, but again, it's still extremely, extremely elevated on the day. We would need to be seeing this pull down very, very, very aggressively. And there was a session where we have an example of that, where we had that super large buying day. and we saw the VVIX go from 131, basically 132, I think, all the way to 119, if I remember. No, 117. So the VVIX can move very, very extreme when the actual moves are present. So if we're going to be having some absurd buying, the VVIX will be pulling down extremely aggressively, with it just kind of chopping in this range. This is still telling us that dealers are hedging their positions and that there's still a very large likelihood we see volatility spike upward. We see some bullish structure here within the actual VIX, which isn't usually something I try to track too much. But with this bullish structure in the actual VIX, and with us being in a consolidation channel, the expectations are basically to trade from the bottom of the channel towards the top, the bottom to the top, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. Um, Now we're starting to fulfill some of the conditions to create that bullish structure to the upside. So can we be, or can we see the volatility spike upward pretty aggressively? I definitely think so. Our semiconductors showing a ton of bearish structure here. Now, the only thing I'm potentially concerned of is forming a right shoulder for this larger head and shoulders here. Potentially that could create, I can't talk right now, excuse me. Potentially that can create some, large upside within semiconductors, which would still, be very bearish liquidity to the downside. However, I'm really not expecting that. But maybe I should expect that because we have a huge chunk of liquidity right there, which, if that's going to be bearish liquidity, not sure that's the same, then we should be anticipating something close to this within this area. Seeing a little bit of that. Now I do want to hide some of the smaller price action. Just because I want to see how close we actually got to that level on the day. I'm gonna check chat here in just a couple seconds. I'm sorry. Don't mean to be ignoring chat. On the 30-minute time frame, this is looking very good to see further continuation to the downside. Very likely striking that 650. From that 650, should form a little liquidity to the upside before heading further downward. So SPY is looking very good to continue downward, but we do just have to be concerned that there is the potential for this block of liquidity to be taken. Use a little thinner so it's not so chunky. We can rebuild this liquidity basically in this area prior to fully heading down, even though it does look like the market is trying to aim down and reclaim all this liquidity at that range. So that's what we're looking for. I'm not really expecting the upside bounce too much, but again, with semiconductors pulled downward and with semiconductors finishing this inverse cup here, we can start creating this handle to the upside, to continue downward, which again, that can be quite a bit of liquidity. Essentially this big old block right there. So we can rebuild this on semiconductors and semiconductors would still be bearish. So that's something we do have to potentially contend with. Now on Oil, just double check oil. Oil's looking very likely it's trying to reclaim this cup back up to the 126. I don't expect that today, but this does coincide very much so with um that downside move within the SPY and tech and everything that we're expecting. So if we continue seeing oil breaking to the upside, it should try to reclaim that cup towards that 126.60, basically 127 range. So that's roughly a whole $10 upside in oil or USO that we can see, um, heavily influence the downside of tech, SPY, all that good stuff. What else? Microsoft, gosh, I wish we took puts on this. I'm so mad. I'm mad at us for not calling it out because we had this lined up perfectly. Oh well. It happens. So it did fully break the previous bullish structure, and this is a super good signal on Microsoft for, our tech downside. Um, overall our tech downside looks very, very good. I haven't even checked the TQQQ puts yet that we've taken. I'm sure they're doing very well. I think we took those a lot closer to the 652 if I remember correctly. Our VVIX starting to pull back up again. A big spike right as I said that. So there we go. That's exactly what we're looking for. Is there a SPY ETF that's like QQQ? Um, like TQQQ and SQQQ, excuse me. Um, I haven't been able to find a really good one. There is one that follows the SPACs, which is UPRO, and I have to find the other side of it. But this is basically the standard bullish side. So this would be like TQQQ. Um, it works very well. We've traded it quite a bit in the past. The contracts, even though it doesn't look like they have a decent amount of liquidity, they still move very well. The spreads on them, they look very large, but usually you can hit the midline pretty decently. So that's one that we have played. Now I know there's another bear bear fund of this, but I'm trying to remember the name of it. I'll have to track that one down later. That one we haven't played a whole lot of, but I know UPro we have played a lot of, and there's very good liquidity in both the calls and the puts generally. So if you want to take puts on that, that's great. Oh, it's SPAX S, I believe. Oh, this is the bear ETF for SPY. So there's SPAX S, which is um tracking the bearish side. So you would take calls to uh, essentially short the SPY. Then SPAXU, I believe, is another one of these type of funds. Played SPAXU a decent amount in the past, but we've played a lot more SPAX S. Also, I swear there's some other one I'm trying to remember, but I just cannot remember right this moment. Now, really quick here, NVIDIA, we are seeing this rejection to the downside that we were expecting here. See this 1 minute time frame. 1 minute time frame, I'm assuming this is trying to track a Head and Shoulders. So this is looking very, very likely that this is going to head to the downside, retag that 137.90 range again. Did we just get an entry for calls? No. Yes, yes, we actually did. Excuse me. So that pushed down to the 649.84. Technically was room on calls. I really dislike calls here though, let me tell you. With the volatility pushing upward, I think it's extremely, extremely risky. So just be very, very cautious if you're trying to take calls. Um, we're really expecting bear structure throughout a large majority of the market. Yeah, even with QQQ, it's entirely breaking down all the previous bullish structure that we had on the day. I would not take calls in this, even though the conditions are there. Um, I think it's a little too risky right now, especially with just how heavily elevated our volatility is. Let me go ahead and look at USO, and I want to circle back and look at the news really quick just to make sure that we're not missing anything within the news. So let's see. Hold on. Let me look through all this really quick. Trump announced a new individual take over the Federal Reserve. Okay. What does that even mean? I thought you already picked a guy. Okay, so this is news over the last like hour. So Trump just ended his speech at 12:15. The EU is saying it's going to take years to restore the damage from the Iranian war on the economies. And then Trump says, don't know yet about Iran deadline. Don't know yet if Friday deadline for Iran will change. Iran lawmakers call to continue war until the enemy is deterred. So really nothing major yet. Reports from Israel. Hezbollah has fired over 100 rockets at Israel today. That's a standard day for Israel. No offense. Not that I'm laughing about that, but they got that Iron Dome for a reason. Very welcome, very welcome. Yeah, you see, this is what I'm worried about with this call entry. This potential call entry here is that we're on the cusp of a major breakdown with this bearish structure. And this breakdown can be absolutely just decimating for the market. Not that I'm expecting this entire move to be taken today. That would be just absurd. That would be basically the SPY getting like a what, a -3% type day. I'm not anticipating that, but we have a massive chunk of liquidity below us that is pretty much begging to be taken right now. And we have the structures right on top of it to do so. So it is a little scary trying to buy calls into that. Um, our volatility has been spiking upward as well. We're seeing the VVIX basically pulling back up towards this 122 range. So a lot of signals are telling us that selling is really getting ready to pick up. And we have been seeing quite a bit of selling out of Bitcoin. And even further on the 5-minute time frame, we have an additional Head and Shoulders building, which again this type of structure where you push up, reject this 5 ma, push down to the lower Bollinger, or I don't mean 5 ma, 20 ma, head down to the lower Bollinger, head up to the 20 ma, reject from there, down to the lower Bollinger. That's exactly the type of movement you're looking for when pushing downward. It's a very crazy day because if we actually start tagging that downside, which we are, then technically this entire gap is open today. Which I actually haven't seen this type of gap open within a day in quite a long time. So today might be some very absurd day. So let's see. Trying not to smile right now because our positions are doing very, very well. I'm actually up on the entire day, even with our missed entry on those first couple of puts. Doing very well. Now, one thing I am seeing out of semiconductors, success is heading back up. So that means semiconductors very, very likely are going to be heading down quite a bit today. The upside on success is telling us that semiconductors basically want to head down all the way to this 332. That's going to take a massive chunk out of the SPY and QQQ if they go for that level today. So, um, today could get very, very insane, let me tell you. Oh man, I bet seeing that in person has to be one of the most incredible things. I've seen some videos of it where it's the actual just people with the cell phone recordings, and it's incredible seeing, you know, 20, 30, 40 rockets flying towards you guys and they just are just taken out just left and right. Scary, but I bet it's incredible to see. Especially when that night there was those usage of the ICBMs over Israel, I believe, where you could actually see them penetrate the atmosphere. Looked absolutely incredible, but it's a shame that that has to come from a weapon of war. Today can get very, very, very red. Let me tell you, today can get extremely red. We need to be watching oil very, very closely right now because this is telling us that we're about to have a massive breakout to the upside. I mean, this almost looks like the type of day where we're going to kind of almost inverse that massive, buying day, even though on oil it's selling, but inverse that massive buying day we had the other day. Um, it's starting to look a lot like that. We're seeing a lot of bullish structure in here throughout multiple days. We have the cup and handle to push our upside here in oil. So again, that upside in oil would weigh extremely heavily against all of our equities. Very surprising day. Um, Not the type of price action I anticipate at all. And here's the real reason why I'm looking so low today. Our lower Bollinger is currently at the 643.86. If the market makers are trying to aim for a lower Bollinger mechanic, which um, is a very, very consistent mechanical trade, if they're aiming for the mechanics of this trade, then that means that they want to secure this level or below today. That would mean that we would be closing below the 643, which, you know, that's quite a bit of ways from where we're at right now. Our upside from here is a level we just rejected, which is that 5 mil. It's the 652.67. So our downside today is absolutely huge. Um, we might just tag this entire downside today, surprisingly enough. I want to see our VVIX is starting to really pull up as well. Again, volatility usually moves gradually and then starts picking up very aggressively. So as this starts picking up more and more and more, this is going to start really skyrocketing. Um, Geez, this is looking very good. Let's see. So on SPY, and let's make sure your Bollinger settings are correct. So the length is 20, width is 2. Um, just make sure you have it dragged all the way, because sometimes if you have the cursor, I don't know if you're using PC or the phone, but I know on the phone where sometimes if I drag it a little to the left side, it will reset where I have the moving averages and Bollingers because it won't be tracking that current day anymore. It starts trying to track one of these other sessions, even though it's not really pulled off to the screen far enough. So just check that in case. Um, but I don't know why that would be different other than that. No, he's saying on his daily time frame, um, which that's a whole, that's roughly a whole 70 cents above, so that's a bit of a concern. So just double check all of your settings and everything. It's very hard to buy calls into this. So here's kind of the scenario of buying calls here. And I do have a ton of other drawings, which I wish I didn't have right now. Do apologize. Hold on. Do you just want to delete some of these? So I guess I could show this on the 2-hour time frame. That would work just fine. I just won't be able to accurately show exactly where the 5 mile is and everything. But we're gonna mark this as the 5 mile. We're gonna say this green box is the 5 mile. And the lower Bollinger, believe we had around that 60-ish range. So we'll just say that here's our lower Bollinger. Okay. So we have all of this range to trade between, where we just rejected this range. This range has told us that this is a resistance currently, pushing against us and pushing downward towards us. Um, each session we close downward, so just ignoring the actual movement currently, but assuming we push downward just $2 from here and close downward, okay? That's going to bring the 5 mile from this 652 60 range all the way down. Basically that's 650. So then the 5 mile pulls down. It decreases this range of where the 5 mile is, and it actually pulls our lower Bollinger down slightly further, which further brings our room to the downside. And this no longer becomes a magnet that we try to really gravitate towards, but it really becomes this weight that's bearing down on us and pushing us into this level. So that's what I'm seeing out of today so far is that our 5 mile range has been bearing down on us and it's basically acting as a major weight against us currently. Um, that major weight doesn't have any support underneath it on the daily time frame. You know, the closest support we have is the 5 mile. Um, so what's underneath this? It's the lower Bollinger. So that means that that room between the lower Bollinger and the 5 mile shouldn't last very, very long. That room should be try to be claimed very quickly because usually the market doesn't like to trade in between support ranges like that for too long. So that's what I'd be cautious of because it does look like that the market really, really wants to try to aim for some major downside. So be careful with calls, but the conditions for calls are here. And going to the 30-minute time frame, just want to look at a few things. So the thing about calls here too is that with this inverse cupping completed, we do, or we have been expecting this push upward already to create the handle to push us further downward. Now, has that already happened? Very, very potentially. It would take a lot of weight to re-pull back up towards this support range at the 652 that we've already basically worked very, very hard to reject to the downside, and that is currently bearing weight against us. So it makes this call upside very sketchy, especially when our volatility has been extremely, extremely elevated. It's still pushing higher, um, even with the SPY price action slightly rising. Um, our volatility is still telling us to our face that dealers are actively buying it. Every single penny this moves upward, that means that dealers are actively buying into this. So, um, that's very, very concerning. I would be very concerned about this call upside. Do you want to see oil? Oil really expecting a breakout unless we have some form of news to change the situation, but currently, I'm not really seeing that. From Iran, we heard their point of view where they're basically saying, no, we don't like your deal. We want our nuclear power and nuclear, enriched uranium. United States and Israel obviously doesn't want Iran to have that. So very likely no form of deal or ceasefire is going to be made. Which again, that was a large reason why we even saw the buying return to the SPY anyway. Um, so if we see that start to fall off the table more, then that's telling us that we're just going to return to the price that we were at. Semiconductors, we're seeing this inverse cup continuing to the downside and continuing this head and shoulders. So that's looking good. So for the rest of the day, I'm not going to be looking for any additional day trades unless we do the following. If we pull back upward towards this 651, um, I would be tagging on quite a bit of shorts into that. Probably one DTE to move into tomorrow, because very likely from that level, it would be aiming down to claim a lot of that, uh, liquidity below us. So that's the only play that I'm really looking at out of the rest of today is if we see some of that reprieve to the upside, then I will take additional puts. But currently, I'm very, very happy in my TQQQ puts. Um, Everything is telling us that we're going to be seeing much further downside from where we're at. And I also want to look at HIG. Oh, jeez. Okay, so yeah, HIG is telling us, you know, screaming to us that the selling is very real. Okay. Anytime HIG is selling, you have to listen. Okay. HIG only sells if there's a risk within the equities. Again, this is the high yield corporate bonds. So basically the highest echelon of top end investing on in terms of equity investing. Yes, it's bond related, so I know that may not make sense with equities, but it is based off of equity weight. Okay. If your upper equities are starting to shake, then the corporate credit on it is also going to be shaking. So big, liquid, very, very important to listen to. Time and sales, you can't see it on your screen, but I do have it on mine. On the time and sales, I have mine so that it only shows buying or selling above 999 shares. Currently, my entire screen is full of sell shares or sell orders on Liquid. There's a sell order here for 283,000 shares. So very, very massive selling within Liquid today. Microsoft has just been absolutely getting decimated. Nvidia building further bearish structure after completing this inverse cup. So we are expecting further downside within Nvidia too. Semiconductors looking like they're finally getting ready to push down to that 332. Complete that inverse cup. So I'd be beyond hesitant to take calls to this upside. I think the put downside is where the money is right now. Um, yes, we did get a little shaken out earlier, but there was some conflicting signals at the time. Um, I wish I didn't get shaken out of my positions earlier. Those would have been absolutely killer, but that happens sometimes. Now I want to see the VVIX again. Yeah, VVIX, and we did talk about this earlier this morning where back at this basically 121 range, I was saying even though it is pulling downward, we're really expecting it to push up towards that 123 plus range today. Um, it's doing exactly that. The next level from here is really heading up towards that 126 plus, which that would definitely take the SPY and QQQ well into that level that we're expecting. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream in about 10 minutes here, but if there is any questions, now's a very good time. And I will be streaming tomorrow morning as well. Do apologize for us missing that first entry. Seeing the US Treasury yield spike as well. very, very likely going to very soon here see leg upward in the oil. Now, within the 30-minute time frame, this does tell us that we can be seeing a very slight pullback just because we're within the upper Bollinger here. So potentially we can be pulling down towards this basically 116.84, 117 range. So a little bit of reprieve there. If you're looking to take that call, that's kind of what you're looking to catch. Is that reprieve within this cup and handle on oil? Just again, the selling conditions are very, very, very large today, so I do dislike trying to take those calls. Now, basically at this point, just to cover this one last time, if we do push up to this 151, 152 level today, then I will be taking additional short positions, which I will just pretty much be buying the exact same TQQQ puts that I've already taken and just adding to those. Again, those are, let's see what strike those are again. And those are the 41 puts for next week. It'd be the 7 DTE puts. Sorry, I just saw that now. But it's the 41 strike. I was tempted to get the 42 strike, but with this selling here, um, we should be tagging that 41 range very, very well within that time frame. So I'm not very worried about that at all. Now, something to look at on QQQ here, which is actually extremely interesting. Um, this actually just backs up the whole thesis that I've had on the bear thesis for today. So you see this very small inverse cup closing here. Now, with that inverse cup closing, what happens? Our lower Bollinger on QQQ is at the 577.99. Closing this cup takes us to the 577.81, meaning very, very likely we're going to see a lower Bollinger move on QQQ start. So a lower Bollinger move on QQQ means that today we would be seeing a close at or below this level, the lower Bollinger. So basically we'd be seeing a close below the 577, with tomorrow expecting a lower low from the day 2 lower Bollinger. Now for SPY, we're not in the lower Bollinger day 1 yet, but with QQQ being in that day 2 lower Bollinger, potentially tomorrow we could see this push down into the lower Bollinger if we don't see it today. So a lot of downside is very, very, very present here. On semiconductors, we see this very large head and shoulders. So that got dragged off a little bit. Very large head and shoulders taking place, and the downside from here is at that 316, basically right on the penny. So, um, currently we're at the 332. The lower Bollinger is at the 324. It's not unreasonable to see an additional, um, you know, $8, $9 downside to tag that lower Bollinger, create the conditions for the lower Bollinger mechanics for the lower Bollinger day one and day two, create the lower low, tag that 316. So I'm seeing a ton of downside currently. Now, I do want to circle back to the VVIX on the daily time frame. Yeah, this 140 range is looking very, very primed. See how in the daily time frame for the VVIX, ever since we've been in the quote unquote bull or bear market conditions, we do not see the VVIX travel underneath this 20 mile very much. Generally, it takes this 20 mile range and bounces back upward. 20 mile, bounce back upward, 20 mile, bounce back upward. Well, currently, we're essentially right above that 20 mile range. Technically, we did hit the lower bounds of that range today, and so far we're seeing another bounce. So our volatility is also telling us that very, very likely we're going to be seeing that volatility spike. So a lot of different signals on a lot of different symbols. But yeah, if there's no further questions, I am going to go ahead and end the stream here for today. I think we covered everything, but I will be streaming tomorrow morning. I have been trying to make the evening videos, but the last few days have just been very crazy, so I haven't been able to get to those, unfortunately. I will try to make one tonight to kind of just cover the spy and whatnot very quickly so that we're all on board. But other than that, I hope you all have a great day, and I do apologize for that first missed entry. That would be the fourth missed trade within the over 2 months plus of streaming. So I do apologize for that, but hopefully you understood why that happened and why I did take the positioning that I did. So um yeah, very, very welcome everybody. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. And I hope you all have a great rest of your days. Again, if we hit this 651 range, 652 range, I'm adding into my short positions. That's the only trade I'm looking for the rest of the day. I don't want to be chasing calls, anything like that. But yeah, have a great day, everybody. Take care, and I will talk to you tomorrow.